Don't let the tow truck take me, the injured biker whispered. A little over an hour later, his road captain demanded the truth at the abandoned way station. Exactly 3 hours after the first horn, 50 motorcycles surrounded the homeless girl again, and she still did not know what they intended. That horn is not sounding by itself. At 4:42 p.m., Mara Hensley stopped beside the cracked entrance of the abandoned red Mesa way station and listened. The October sun hung low over the desert, turning the empty inspection lanes copper, while a dry wind pushed wrappers across the concrete. Then the horn sounded again. One short note, 2 weak taps. Silence. Mara shifted the faded green backpack on her shoulder and looked toward the highway barrier. She had walked 7.3 miles since leaving Bell's Travel Mart, where the manager had told her she could not stay behind the ice machine after sunset. Her entire budget was $18.74, folded inside an empty peppermint tin beside a bus receipt and a photograph she never showed anyone. The last thing she had eaten was a 99-cent cinnamon roll that tasted mostly of waxy icing and old refrigerator air. She had come to the way station for shelter, not trouble. The place had been closed for 6 years, according to the sun-bleached notice taped inside the locked office window. The roof still offered shade, and the concrete wall blocked the evening wind. That was enough for one night. Mara heard the horn again and moved toward it. Beyond the barrier, the ground dropped sharply into pale gravel and thorny brush. A black motorcycle lay on its right side, 20 feet below, its right turn signal still blinking weakly through the dust. The machine was a 2009 Harley-Davidson Electra Glide Ultra Classic, heavy, polished, and far more expensive than anything Mara had touched in years. One saddlebag had opened, scattering a road map, a pair of leather gloves, and a motel receipt printed with a total of $67.50, while a black riding jacket remained strapped across the rear seat. The air smelled of hot rubber, leaking fuel, desert dust, and something metallic carried upward by the wind. Mara climbed over the barrier carefully. Her boots slid twice on the loose gravel before she reached the motorcycle. At first, she saw no rider. Then a hand moved beneath the shadow of a mesquite branch. The man lay within arm's reach of the motorcycle, his left hand stretched toward the raised handlebar and 2 fingers resting near the horn switch. He looked to be in his early 60s. His beard was silver at the chin, and a long scar ran from beneath his left ear toward the corner of his mouth. A red and white Hell's Angels patch covered the back of his vest, dusty but unmistakable. His helmet was still secured. His breathing came in shallow, uneven pulls. Mara dropped to her knees beside him. "Sir, can you hear me?" His fingers slipped from the horn switch and fell weakly onto the gravel. She did not move him. Instead, she placed 2 rolled shirts from her backpack beside his helmet to keep his head steady, then pressed a clean bandana against the tear in his sleeve. The cloth darkened quickly. Mara checked her watch. 4:49 p.m. 7 minutes had passed since the first horn. She looked up at the empty highway, where only a white delivery van moved west in the distance without slowing. "Stay with me," she said. "My name is Mara. I'm going to find an emergency line or enough signal to call for help." The biker's eyes opened. They were pale blue, alert for only a second before pain pulled them half closed again. His hand closed around her wrist with surprising strength. "No tow truck," he whispered. Mara leaned closer, unsure she had heard correctly. The man swallowed, forcing out 4 more words. "Don't let them take me." Mara held his gaze until the strength left his fingers and his hand slipped back onto the gravel. "Who are they?" she asked, but the biker's eyes had already closed. His chest rose once, paused, then rose again. Slowly, she checked the time on the scratched silver watch she had bought for $6 at a church thrift sale 2 years earlier. 4:51 p.m. The air still carried the bitter smell of gasoline, but now she noticed another scent beneath it: scorched rubber and warm engine oil. Mara leaned close enough to feel his breath against the back of her hand. He was breathing, though each shallow pull seemed to cost him. She resisted the urge to shake him awake. At the women's shelter in Winslow, A volunteer nurse had once taught a 20-minute first aid class using a plastic mannequin with one missing arm. Do not move someone after a serious crash unless the location itself is dangerous. Do not remove a helmet without proper support. Keep the person still, watch the breathing, control visible bleeding. Mara remembered all 3 rules. She replaced one of the rolled shirts with her folded jeans, leaving the second shirt braced against the opposite side of the helmet to limit movement. The bandana against his arm was nearly soaked, so she pressed a clean cotton sock over it instead of lifting the first layer. The man's face tightened, but he did not wake. "I know," Mara said quietly. "I know it hurts." Her backpack contained one 20-ounce bottle of water, 2 packets of crackers, a toothbrush, a flashlight with weak batteries, a prepaid phone showing 11% battery and no service, and a Navy sleeping bag rated for 40 degrees. By midnight, the desert could fall below 50. Without that bag, she would spend the night awake and shivering beneath the way station roof. She pulled out anyway. Mara stretched the sleeping bag between a bent guardrail post and a mesquite branch, creating a low patch of shade over the biker's upper body. She weighted one corner with a flat stone and another with her backpack. The setup looked uneven and temporary. It worked. At 5:03 p.m., she climbed back toward the highway. The emergency call box stood 180 feet east of the fallen motorcycle, mounted on a faded yellow post beside mile marker 86. Mara lifted the metal receiver. Nothing. She pressed the red call button 5 times, waited 10 seconds, and tried again. Still nothing. She walked around the post and saw 4 silver screws lying neatly in the dirt. The rear panel hung open by one corner. Inside, 2 black wires and 1 green wire had been cut cleanly, not torn by weather or animals. The exposed copper was bright. Recent. Mara stared at the wires, then looked across the empty lanes. Someone had disabled the only emergency line for miles. She hurried back down the slope and searched near the motorcycle without disturbing anything she did not need to touch. Calder's phone lay beneath the edge of the road map. Its glass was cracked from corner to corner, and the battery symbol showed 3%. The screen lit for only a moment. No signal. One notification appeared above the lock screen. Voice message queued. For 47 p.m., Mara pressed the side button, but the display went black. She placed the phone beside Calder's gloved hand and checked his breathing again. 12 breaths in 1 minute, but several were shallow and uneven. She called to him until his eyelids moved, then asked his name. "Calder," he murmured. A pause followed. "Rook." Mara repeated both names to keep him focused, but his eyes drifted closed again. At 5:11 p.m., a gray vehicle appeared beyond the eastern curve. It moved slowly along the shoulder instead of staying in the travel lane. As it drew closer, sunlight flashed across a steel towing boom mounted behind the cab. Calder opened his eyes before Mara said a word. His breathing quickened. The gray tow truck turned through the cracked entrance of the abandoned way station and began rolling directly toward them. The tow truck stopped 12 feet from the broken guardrail, its diesel engine idling beneath a layer of desert dust. A white man stepped from the cab wearing dark work pants, a pale gray shirt, and a laminated badge clipped above his left pocket. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, clean-shaven except for a narrow strip of beard along his jaw, with mirrored sunglasses and a smile that arrived before he spoke. "Roadside recovery," he said. "You can step away now." Mara stayed beside Calder. The man glanced at her worn boots, the faded backpack, and the sleeping bag stretched above the injured biker. His eyes moved over each item as if calculating its value. Then he looked toward the Harley. "That is a 2009 Electra Glide," he said. 900 pounds loaded. Expensive machine to leave on its side. Mara checked her watch. 5:13 p.m. Did you call an ambulance? The man closed the truck door and walked closer. The badge on his chest read Colton Price, Certified Highway Response, Corridor Permit 4817. A blue and silver logo appeared beneath the name, but the truck door carried different lettering, Desert Crest Towing. "Medical transport is already arranged," Colton said. "County EMS is delayed. I'm authorized to move him to a medical rendezvous point at Junction 14 26 miles east. Mara looked past him at the towing boom, the steel chains, and the empty passenger seat. There was no medical equipment visible. No stretcher. No emergency markings. Which hospital? She asked. Colton removed his sunglasses. His eyes were light brown and unusually calm. You are not family, ma'am. Neither are you. The smile remained, but the warmth disappeared from it. Colton crouched near Calder without asking permission. Calder's eyelids opened, and his breathing became faster. His right hand scraped weakly against the gravel. Mara saw the reaction before Colton noticed it. Easy, Colton said. We are taking you somewhere safe. Calder turned his face away. Colton reached toward the strap of his helmet. Mara stepped between his hand and the helmet strap before he could touch it. Do not remove that. Colton slowly looked down at her hand. I know my work. Then you know not to move him without supporting his neck. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Mara released him first. Colton stood and wiped dust from his sleeve, even though there was none. What is your name? He asked. Mara. Last name. She did not answer. Colton looked toward the highway, then back at the injured biker. Mara, this man needs professional care. You have no vehicle, no phone service, and no authority here. If his condition gets worse because you delayed transport, that becomes your responsibility. The words were gentle. The warning was not. Mara felt the full weight of the choice. Calder's breathing was shallow, the bandage at his arm was dark, and the sun was sinking lower every minute. Colton had a truck. He had a badge. He had the confident voice of someone accustomed to being believed. Mara studied the badge again. The printed company name did not match the truck. The number 4817 appeared slightly crooked beneath the plastic, and the lower edge of the card showed a second layer of faded lettering underneath. Show me the dispatch order, she said. Colton's jaw tightened. The motorcycle sent an automatic roadside alert. His phone had no signal. The system uses satellite service. Then why did you come from the east when the nearest license station is west? Colton stared at her. A warm gust carried the smell of diesel exhaust across the slope, mixing with gasoline and dry sage. He reached toward the motorcycle keys lying beside Calder's glove. Mara stepped between him and the injured man. You can treat him here, she said. You can call a real ambulance. You can show me a valid dispatch record. Colton's expression finally changed. Move. Mara planted both feet in the gravel. You are not taking him anywhere. Colton held Mara's gaze for several seconds, then lifted both hands as if she had misunderstood a perfectly reasonable man. Fine, he said. We do this your way. He returned to the gray tow truck, opened a side compartment, and removed a small red medical case with a faded white cross on the lid. Mara watched him set it on the gravel, but he never opened it. Instead, he walked around the fallen Harley, studying the saddlebag, the ignition, and the cracked phone beside Calder's glove. At 5:18 p.m., he crouched as though checking the motorcycle's frame and quietly reached for the key fob. Mara stepped on it before his fingers arrived. That stays with him. Colton straightened. I need the key to secure the bike. You said he needed medical care. Both things can be true. Mara bent, picked up the fob, and slid it into the front pocket of her jeans. The plastic was still warm from the sun. Colton's eyes followed it. For a moment, the only movement came from Calder's shallow breathing and the sleeping bag shifting above him in the wind. Then another vehicle appeared at the way station entrance. It was a white 2006 Chevrolet Silverado with mismatched doors, a dented front bumper, and no company markings. The driver, a heavy-set white man in his late 30s, parked behind Colton's truck and stepped out carrying a coil of yellow toe straps. He smelled of tobacco, engine grease, and strong wintergreen gum. Problem? He asked. Witness confusion, Colton replied. The second man looked at Mara's backpack, then at Calder's leather vest. She taking his things? That is what I'm trying to determine. Mara felt the accusations settle into the empty space around them. She stood beside an injured man with his key in her pocket, his damaged phone near her knee, and his belongings scattered across the gravel. Colton had a uniform. His partner had towing equipment. To anyone arriving late, the story could be turned against her in less than 10 seconds. My name is Mara Hensley, she said clearly. I found him at 4:49. The emergency call box at marker 86 has 3 wires cut, and neither of you has called an ambulance. Colton's partner chewed twice before answering. Maybe you cut them. Mara looked at Colton's badge again. The number 4817 was printed in a different shade of black from the rest of the card. Beneath the laminate, the company name sat slightly higher on the left side, and a faint row of older letters showed through near the bottom edge. Let me see your license. Colton touched the badge, but did not remove it. You already saw it. I saw a card. I want the issuing agency, expiration date, and dispatch number. You are delaying emergency service. Then give me the information. The partner moved closer, stopping 6 feet away. He said Mara could be reported for interfering with roadside operations, unlawful possession of vehicle property, and theft of personal effects. Colton added that the Harley's replacement value was at least $14,000, enough to turn a misunderstanding into a serious charge. Mara's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice even. I photographed both license plates and sent them with my location. It was a lie. Her own phone had shown no service since noon, and its battery had fallen to 11%. Colton did not know that. His partner glanced toward the highway. Colton remained still. To whom, he asked. Someone who knows where I am. Another lie. Mara had not spoken to anyone she trusted in 6 weeks. Still, the words changed the space between them. Colton's partner stopped chewing. Colton looked toward the broken call box, then at Calder's phone. Mara reached it first and pressed the side button. The shattered screen flickered to life for less than 2 seconds. A new message appeared above the lock symbol. Location shared successfully. The phone had caught one weak bar for only a few seconds, long enough to send the cued voice message and Calder's saved location before. The signal disappeared again. Colton saw it too. The message remained on the shattered screen for less than a second before Calder's phone went black again. Colton looked at Mara, then at the eastern horizon, where the highway disappeared between 2 low ridges. His partner stopped chewing. Who received it? Colton asked. Mara slipped the phone inside her jacket. Someone Calder trusted. Colton's calm expression tightened at the edges. He moved 1 step closer, but Calder suddenly dragged in a sharp breath and opened his eyes. Mara immediately knelt beside him. Calder, stay still. Your location went through. His pale blue eyes found a gray tow truck first. Then they shifted to Colton. You, he whispered. Colton lifted his hands. You had an accident. We are here to help. Calder tried to speak again, but the effort brought a strained pause to his breathing. Mara counted a 3-second pause before his chest rose again. She kept one hand near his shoulder without pressing down. 1 word at a time, she said. Tell me what happened. Calder swallowed. Call box. He paused. Saw him. Colton's partner looked toward the yellow emergency post. Colton did not. Mara leaned closer. Calder's voice was rough and barely above the wind. He had been riding west at 4:36 p.m. when he noticed a gray tow truck parked beside mile marker 86 with no disabled vehicle nearby. Colton stood behind the call box with its metal panel open. Calder slowed because the scene made no sense. He cut it, Calder said. The wires? Mara asked. Calder blinked once. Yes. He had taken a photograph of the truck's rear plate with his phone, then continued past the way station. 2 minutes later, the gray truck pulled onto the highway behind him. Calder did not know whether Colton had seen the photograph, but the truck stayed close for several hundred yards, matching every change in speed as Calder approached the way station's western entrance. At 4:40, Calder turned through the way station's western entrance, hoping the open inspection lanes would give him room to stop and document the truck. Colton followed. You were chasing him, Mara said. No, Colton replied. I was responding to a rider in distress. Calder's eyes hardened. Liar. The single word carried more force than everything he had managed before it. His hand moved weakly toward the phone inside Mara's jacket. She understood. You sent the voice message before you went down. Calder nodded. He had spoken only 4 seconds before the phone slipped from his hand. Marker 86. Bad tow. Red missa. Colton's partner shifted the yellow straps from one hand to the other. That proves nothing. Calder forced out the rest in broken pieces. The gray truck had moved across the shoulder near the western exit, leaving only a narrow strip of pavement beside loose gravel. Calder avoided the truck, but lost traction. The Harley slid beneath him, struck the guardrail, and threw him down the slope. Colton had not stopped immediately. He had driven away. Then he circled back and returned at 5:11 wearing the badge. Mara looked at her watch. 5:34 p.m. The timeline matched. The engine had still been hot when she found Calder, and the tow truck had approached from the same direction in which it had disappeared. Colton stepped toward Mara. "Give me the phone." She backed closer to Calder. "No, that device belongs with the vehicle. It belongs to him. You do not understand what you are holding." Mara put the phone deeper inside her jacket and zipped it shut. "I understand that you came back for it." Colton's partner moved to Mara's left, trying to separate her from the slope leading toward the highway. She noticed and shifted so the fallen Harley remained behind her, forcing both men to approach from the same direction. Calder's fingers closed around a handful of gravel. He had no strength to stand, but his eyes stayed open now. Colton removed his badge and held it toward Mara. "Look carefully. I am licensed. I have authority to recover this motorcycle and transport its rider." Mara took the badge by its lower corner. The plastic laminate was warm and slightly loose. Beneath the printed name, Colton Price, a faded line of text showed through. Property Inspection Services. The number 4817 had been placed over an older number ending in 62. Mara turned the card toward the lowering sun. The blue and silver logo was a sticker. "This was another company's card," she said. Colton reached for it. Mara pulled it away. Behind them, Calder's phone vibrated once inside her jacket. The screen did not light, but the vibration was clear. Someone had received his location. Someone was answering. Colton heard the vibration and reached for Mara's jacket. She stepped back before his hand crossed the space between them. His partner shifted right, closing the open path toward the way station. Calder watched both men from the gravel, breathing in short, measured pulls. "Do not touch me," Mara said. Colton stopped. "One step away." "That phone contains private business information," he said. Mara held up the altered badge between two fingers. "And this contains a name printed over someone else's license." The sun had dropped behind the western ridge, leaving a narrow band of orange above the highway. At 5:41 p.m., the temperature display on Colton's dashboard still read 72 degrees, but the wind had sharpened. Mara unfastened the black riding jacket from the Harley's rear seat and pulled it over her thin green coat. It smelled of road dust, old leather, cedar soap, and faint cigarette smoke. To a stranger arriving now, she would look like a woman wearing the injured man's property while holding his phone and motorcycle key. Colton seemed to recognize the same problem. "When the highway unit arrives," he said, "I will explain that we found you taking items from an unconscious rider." His partner nodded. "Badge, phone, keys, jacket. That is a clear picture." Mara looked toward the empty highway. No official vehicle was coming. "Not yet." "Then explain the cut wires too," she said. Colton's partner walked closer to the open call box and examined it from several feet away without touching the panel. "Could have been like that for months." "The copper is bright," Mara replied. "The screws are still in the dirt." Colton lowered his voice. "You are making this worse for yourself." Mara remembered the shelter nurse's instruction to observe everything before help arrived. "Time, position, changes." She began saying the details aloud so Calder could hear them, and so the two men knew she was recording them in memory. Gray tow truck entered at 5:11. White Silverado arrived at 5:22. Colton Price presented badge number 4817. The badge has an altered company label. Neither man has contacted emergency medical services. The partner's chewing stopped. "Who are you talking to?" "Anyone who asks later." At 5:45, a blue tractor trailer passed westbound. Mara climbed halfway up the gravel slope and waved both arms. The driver glanced toward the way station, but continued. Colton smiled without warmth. People see a tow truck and assume the situation is handled. Mara looked at the yellow reflective strip sewn across the bottom of her backpack. She tore it loose with both hands, tied it to a mesquite branch, and planted the branch near the shoulder where passing drivers could see it moving. Then she placed Calder's silver road map beneath a flat stone, using the white surface to catch the last light. 3 signals. 1 chance. Colton's partner moved toward the branch. Mara stepped between him and the slope. Leave it. He stopped close enough for her to smell wintergreen gum. You cannot keep us here. I'm not keeping you anywhere. She pointed toward both trucks. You can leave whenever you want. You just cannot take Calder, his phone, or his motorcycle. Calder opened his eyes and gave the smallest nod. Colton looked down at him. You need treatment, Rook. She is gambling with your life. Calder's mouth moved. Mara leaned near him. What did he say? The partner asked. Calder tried again. She stayed. The words were faint but clear. Mara checked his breathing, adjusted the folded shirt beside his helmet, and pressed the bandage without lifting it. His skin felt cooler now. She needed real medical help soon. At 5:49, another vehicle approached from the west, a green Peterbilt hauling an empty livestock trailer. Mara waved the reflective strip. This time the truck slowed. It stopped on a shoulder 90 yards beyond the way station entrance. A white driver in his late 50s climbed down wearing a plaid shirt and carrying his company-issued satellite fleet phone. Colton walked uphill to meet him first. Roadside recovery, he called. We have an injured rider and an unstable bystander interfering with transport. The driver looked past him at Mara, then at Calder beneath the sleeping bag shade. Has an ambulance been called? Colton answered too quickly. It is being coordinated. Mara raised the altered badge, asking for the dispatch number. Then look inside the call box. The driver studied Colton for 2 seconds, walked around him, and examined the cut wires. He lifted the satellite phone. Fleet dispatch. This is Unit 214 near marker 86. Confirm whether Desert Crest towing is authorized on this corridor. Colton's partner took 1 slow step toward his Silverado. Mara noticed. So did the truck driver. Before anyone spoke, a low vibration traveled through the concrete beneath their feet. It was too steady for thunder and too deep for a single engine. Mara looked east. Beyond the ridge, the first points of white light appeared in a long, moving line. The riders had already been traveling together after a memorial stop 21 miles east when Calder's cued message reached Everett at 5:33. The lights multiplied as they cleared the eastern ridge, 2 at first, then 6, then more than Mara could count. Their formation stretched nearly half a mile along the right lane, each headlamp holding a steady distance from the one ahead. The vibration rose through the concrete, through her boots, through the gravel beneath Calder's body. 50 motorcycles, maybe more. The truck driver lowered the satellite phone and stared east. Colton's partner moved closer to the Silverado, but Colton remained beside the slope, his face unreadable in the fading light. Mara looked down at herself and suddenly understood what the arriving riders would see. She wore Calder's black leather jacket. His key fob rested in her pocket. His damaged phone was hidden inside the jacket, and his motorcycle lay behind her with 1 saddlebag open. Colton had a tow truck, a uniform, and a badge that looked convincing from 20 feet away. Mara had a torn backpack, and no one who could confirm her story except a badly injured man struggling to stay awake. The first motorcycle entered the abandoned way station at 5:54 p.m. It was a dark blue Harley road glide ridden by a broad white man with a silver beard and a scar crossing the bridge of his nose. Behind him came motorcycles in pairs, then rows, filling the cracked inspection lanes without blocking the highway entrance. Their riders ranged from their late 40s to nearly 70, all white men in dark leather, weathered denim, and heavy boots. Some carried Hell's Angels patches matching Calder's. Others wore plain riding vests. No one shouted. No one rushed toward Colton. They simply took positions. 15 motorcycles formed a line near the highway shoulder. 12 stopped along the western edge of the way station. The rest curved around the slope, leaving an open lane wide enough for emergency vehicles. Mara found herself standing inside a broad semicircle of chrome, leather, and white headlights. Surrounded, the silver-bearded rider shut off his road glide and removed his gloves 1 finger at a time. The others kept their engines running. He walked toward Mara with measured steps, his eyes moving from Calder to the fallen Electra Glide, then to the altered badge in her hand. "Everett Slade," he said. His voice was low and controlled. "County Medical Dispatch is already on the way," Everett said. "Is Rook breathing steadily? And where's his phone?" Mara did not reach inside the jacket. "His breathing is shallow and uneven. His phone is safe." Everett looked at the jacket she wore, then at the key-shaped outline in her pocket. Colton stepped forward before Mara could explain. "I'm glad you arrived," he said. "This woman has interfered with an authorized recovery, taken property from your rider, and prevented us from transporting him for medical care." Everett turned toward Colton. "Your name?" "Colton Price. Desert Crest Towing. Dispatch number?" Colton paused for half a second. The order came through an automatic roadside alert. Everett's eyes shifted back to Mara. She held out the badge. "The company name is pasted over an old inspection card. The emergency box was cut open. Calder said this truck followed him before he went down." The men around them remained silent, but several riders lifted their phones and began recording. Mara felt the weight of every camera. She did not know whether they were documenting Colton or preserving evidence against her. Everett crouched beside Calder without touching him. "Rook, can you hear me?" Calder's eyes opened slowly. He recognized Everett, and some of the strain left his face. Everett leaned closer. "Who found you?" Calder moved his hand toward Mara. His fingers barely lifted from the gravel. "She did." Everett looked over his shoulder at her. "Did she take anything?" Calder breathed twice before answering. "She stayed." 2 words. "Enough." Everett rose, faced the riders, and raised one closed fist. 50 engines shut off in a rolling sequence until the entire way station became still. The sudden silence felt larger than the noise that had preceded it. Everett pointed to the open lane. "Keep that clear for medical transport." Then he assigned riders to photograph the severed callbox wires, the tire marks, both trucks, the altered badge, and every object near Calder's motorcycle. No one touched Colton. No one approached his partner. They simply documented everything. Colton looked around the semicircle and tried to recover his confident tone. "This gathering is interfering with my work." Everett stopped 6 feet in front of him. "No one is stopping you from speaking." He gestured toward the cameras, the truck driver, and Mara. "So tell it again." Colton glanced toward his gray tow truck. Everett's expression did not change. "From the beginning," he said, in front of everyone. Colton began with the same calm voice he had used when he arrived. He claimed an automated alert had reached Desert Crest Towing at 5:02 p.m., identified the motorcycle by model, and directed him to mile marker 86. He said Calder had already been injured when the gray truck entered the way station. Everett waited. "Show us the alert." Colton reached into his shirt pocket, removed a black phone, and tapped the screen 3 times. He said the dispatch application had lost service and could not load the record. Everett pointed toward the truck driver, holding the satellite phone. "Then give the driver your corridor permit number." Colton recited 4817. The truck driver repeated it into the satellite phone and waited. Around them, the bikers continued recording without speaking, while 2 men used their headlights to illuminate the severed wires inside the emergency call box. One photographed the 4 clean screws in the dirt beside the open panel. Nothing moved unnoticed. His fleet dispatcher called back 3 minutes later after checking with State Highway Control. The driver listened, asked his dispatcher to repeat the information, then lowered the satellite phone. "Corridor permit 4817 belongs to Mesa Valley Recovery and expired 14 months ago," he said. Colton's partner looked toward the white Silverado. Everett noticed. "No one from our group touches either vehicle," Everett said. "Keep the exit open and preserve the scene until state transportation arrives." His voice remained even. No one blocked the men, touched them, or raised a fist, yet the semicircle of cameras made every movement visible. Colton tried another explanation. He said Desert Crest operated under Mesa Valley's former permit, while a renewal was pending. He claimed the mismatched name on his badge was an administrative error and the cut call box wires had nothing to do with him. Mara held the badge toward the nearest phone camera. The logo is a sticker. One biker zoomed in on the lifted corner of the laminate, revealing the faded words Property Inspection Services beneath Colton's name. Another photographed the older identification number ending in 62. The evidence was small. It was enough. At 6:07 p.m., red emergency lights appeared beyond the western curve. A licensed highway response truck entered first, followed by an ambulance and a state transportation compliance investigator in a white utility vehicle. The bikers moved their motorcycles 2 feet at a time, widening the open lane without being asked. Paramedics reached Calder within seconds. They stabilized his neck, placed an oxygen mask over his face, and checked the layered dressing Mara had kept secured for more than an hour. One paramedic looked at her work. "You kept the pressure steady." Mara nodded. "And you did not remove his helmet?" She shook her head. "Good." The transportation compliance investigator examined Colton's badge, photographed both trucks, and called the number painted on the gray door. The actual Desert Crest office answered from a town 118 miles south and confirmed that Colton Price had never worked for them. No roadside request had been issued for Calder's motorcycle. No automatic alert existed. The compliance investigator then inspected the call box and found fresh tool marks around the rear panel. Colton stopped explaining. His partner placed the yellow straps on the ground and stepped away from the Silverado. The paramedics used a scoop stretcher to transfer Calder onto the ambulance cot, then carried him slowly up the gravel slope. As they passed Mara, Calder raised one hand from beneath the blanket. She reached for it. His fingers closed weakly around hers for 3 seconds before the stretcher moved toward the ambulance. "Phone," he whispered through the oxygen mask. Mara removed the cracked device from inside her jacket and placed it beside his hand. "Still safe." Calder looked at Everett, then back at Mara. "So is she." The ambulance doors closed at 6:19 p.m. Its lights moved west until they disappeared beyond the ridge, leaving the way station under 50 white motorcycle lamps. Mara returned Calder's key fob to Everett and began removing the leather jacket. "Keep it on," he said. "It is getting cold." She looked toward the highway, expecting the bikers to start their engines and follow the ambulance. No one moved. Everett picked up Mara's faded backpack, brushed the gravel from its bottom, and placed it beside her. Behind him, 50 men remained in a silent circle. They had come for Calder, yet not one of them was leaving Mara alone. At 7:42 p.m., exactly 3 hours after Mara first heard the weak motorcycle horn, all 50 bikes surrounded her again, this time in the hospital's overflow parking lot, well away from the ambulance entrance. Their headlights formed a wide, careful circle around the curb, where she sat with her backpack between her boots and Calder's leather jacket still resting across her shoulders. No one blocked the ambulance entrance. No one raised a voice. Everett stood in front of the group and handed Mara a paper cup of coffee that tasted of burnt beans, powdered cream, and too much sugar. "Rook is stable," he said. Calder had 3 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, a concussion, and a deep cut on his arm that required 16 stitches. Doctors expected him to remain hospitalized for at least 5 days, followed by several weeks of physical therapy. Mara closed both hands around the warm cup. "Will he ride again?" Everett looked through the glass doors toward the treatment wing. "That decision belongs to him." The transportation compliance investigator arrived at 8:06 with an evidence receipt and a preliminary incident report. The gray tow truck and white Silverado had been held for inspection. Desert Crest Towing confirmed in writing that Colton had used its name without permission, and highway records showed no authorized recovery request for mile marker 86. The altered badge, severed call box wires, photographs from Calder's phone, tire marks, and recordings from the bikers established a consistent timeline. Both trucks received immediate out-of-service orders, while civil cases were opened for permit fraud, unauthorized towing activity, infrastructure damage, and restitution. The damaged emergency box was scheduled for inspection the next morning, with a preliminary replacement estimate of $2,840. Mara's spoken timestamps, preserved on several bikers' phone recordings, supplied the exact arrival times that connected every detail. She had not fought anyone. She had simply refused to let the wrong story become the official one. The transportation compliance investigator asked Mara for a mailing address before recording her formal witness statement in the hospital lobby. She stared at the blank line for several seconds. Everett did not answer for her. He only placed a motel business card on the counter. 10 nights had been prepaid at $61 per night, including tax. After that, he said, "We help with identification papers and a bus pass. The rest stays your choice." 2 weeks later, Calder left the hospital with his right arm supported and a printed therapy schedule folded inside his vest. He met Mara at a small motorcycle repair shop 23 miles west of Red Mesa, located 6 stops from her motel on the county weekday bus route. The owner offered her a 30-day paid trial counting parts, recording invoices, and checking incoming orders. The work paid $14.75 an hour. It was not a miracle. It was a beginning. Mara made mistakes during her first week, especially with serial numbers, but she arrived early every morning and kept every receipt. After 3 months, she rented a small room above a laundromat for $525 a month. She bought a new 40-degree sleeping bag, even though she now had a bed. The old habit of keeping everything packed took longer to leave. Calder returned to the shop on a cold January afternoon. He still moved his right shoulder cautiously, and the scar on his arm remained pink. He placed a coffee on Mara's desk and looked at the backpack beneath it. The zipper was open. Her clothes were no longer folded for a sudden departure. Outside, motorcycles began filling the parking lot. Mara looked toward the window. 50 riders had once surrounded her beneath desert headlights, and for one terrible moment, she had believed they had come to judge her. Now she understood why they had stayed. Calder lifted his cup. "You heard one horn when everyone else kept driving." Mara looked at the men waiting outside, then at the small apartment key beside her time card. "You sent one message," she replied. Neither of them called it rescue. They did not need to. If you believe in the true brotherhood and kindness of bikers, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.